Hey everyone, this is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And this is Season 5 of Pero Let Me Tell You.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fresh presents Que Bola, where we talk to various movers and hustlers who are popping off and succeeding in the 305 and at the same time influencing the culture. I'm your boy D Fig. Holla at your boy when you see me in the street. Ew. What's good? What's Gucci, yo? It's your boy D Fig. Holla at your boy when you see me in the street. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Que Bola podcast. It's your boy D Fig. You know what's poppin'. Que Bola, mi gente. Ya tú sabes, aquí estamos echando tremendo making bean. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this great episode, we sat down with the creators of Pero Let Me Tell You podcast. DJ and Ish, man. These my people right here, man. Local AF creators about South Florida current events podcast. They also do chicken wings, ping pong pollo. They also are involved in political things in Miami-Dade County. Really cool ass people, man. If you haven't checked out the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast, you definitely should check it out. Yeah, in this episode, we sat down with them and we chopped it up. Second time they've been on the podcast, on the Que Bola podcast, and I'm super appreciative to them. There's some people that I admire, their tenacity, their perseverance in this podcast game and in this creatives game, because being a creative ain't as easy as people think it is, bro. You know, there's a lot of ups and downs in this mug, and people like this keep me going. You know, Miami-Dade County Latino creatives pushing stuff out for people locally and nationwide and even beyond, worldwide. You know, worldwide. So without further ado, let's get into it. It's your boy D Fig, Que Bola podcast, episode 62. Pero let me tell you, listo. All right, so we are in another episode of the Que Bola podcast. What's up? Thank you so much to the gentlemen from the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast. My dogs, DJ and Ish, in the studio. Thank you so much for coming through, man.
Hey, thank you for having us. Like, okay, first of all, let's just say up front, we are digging the studio.
Yeah.
We're a little jealous.
I call it the lab.
The lab. Okay,
when I walked
okay.
out, I'm like, Darwin, this is your lab.
Okay, we're jealous of the lab officially.
Thank you, man.
Like, this is what we aspire to when we become grown-ups. You know?
It's been a long time coming. Put it together with help of my wife. Of course, she's an interior designer, so a lot of, like, you can see the carpet and shit like that. That's not, I'm never going to pick out a zebra carpet. You know, it's like...
Don't sell yourself short. Maybe you would.
She knows my funky style, so she knows what kind of stuff I like. And yeah, man, I appreciate her for helping me put this together and bringing in beautiful guests like yourselves, man, to come and shoot the shit with me.
Well, you know, we're like family at this point.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're just hanging out.
100%.
With microphones in front of us.
Facts. This is the second time you guys have been on the podcast.
Yes,
sir.
I actually was watching our first interview yesterday.
Okay.
To see where we, you know, evolved.
I remember that was the long-haired version of you.
Yes, that was season 1 of our podcast. So it was, long hair version of me.
That's when he was leaning into the Jesus part of Darwin Jesus.
Yeah.
Darwin Jesus.
What do you think the J and DJ is?
I did not know that was the
I'm a nice Latin boy. Listen, if you're Latin and your middle name is with a J, it's probably Jesus or Juan.
Yeah,
or Jose.
Jose.
Like,
it's 3.
I was thinking, yeah, but more of the Juan or the Jesus, the Jose part.
Yeah. No, it's funny because my kid was born on Christmas. And everybody was like, tú debes a poner Jesús. Debes de poner Jesús. And I'm like, no. I'm like, that would be, that's a hard no.
You know what? I was listening to a comedian the other day, and he said that, and this is so fucking true. No, white people don't name their kid Jesus. There's no white people named Jesus.
You're right.
It's all Latin
I've never
people.
thought about that. You're absolutely right.
And what I think is funny that people are like, in English or white people when they know my middle name, it's like, oh, Darian Jesus. I'm like, it's Jesus. It's
Yeah.
not the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds weird. Like
It
to
sounds
say
weird
to
in
say
English, man.
to say Jesus,
Jesus
like
is
it's
weird.
When I say
weird.
my name, Darian Jesus Borges, it's like
No.
it's Darian Jesus Borges.
Yeah,
Even
no.
if I
When you say it in
know.
English, it sounds like you got like a Kanye thing going. Like
Kanye,
no,
superstar style. Kanye. So,
Oye, que mierda, he pulled out of
the Rolling Loud.
Rolling Loud.
yeah.
But then he showed up anyway.
No, but did he perform?
I forget with whom. Somebody else was performing, and they were like, "And here's Kanye." He just kind of like showed up and
Like a
did
special guest
Yeah,
type
did a
of thing.
special guest stuff, and then the poor guy who was headlining Kid Cudi got water bottles
You
thrown at
saw
him.
that? That's some Miami shit right there, bro.
That's fucked up.
That is fucked up. I mean, I'm sure he probably got paid anyways.
Oh,
Yeah,
either
bro.
way, shit. And he warned the crowd.
Yeah.
Welcome to Miami.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some Miami as fuck stuff, bro.
Yeah.
So what episode are you guys currently at? 216?
250. Well, next week will be 215.
Yeah. No, 214. 214.
214.
As of this recording, we will be doing 214. It will be the
Dropping
next one.
this week.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Wow, man. 214 episodes. That's
Yeah.
a shit ton of work.
I
my
think when
God.
you
it is.
interviewed us, we were in the 50s.
Wow.
Like episode
Maybe.
50
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Because it was year one. So, yeah.
Damn, man. I mean, yo, I tip my hat off to you guys. That's an accomplishment, and
It is. That's been one things we've been very consistent about. Like last week, we were both on vacation. All of our group and family, we took
So we
a
have this
vacation.
nice glow about us.
So before we left, we recorded 2 episodes, which generally we like our episodes. They drop on Friday, so we like to record on Thursday, so they could be as current as possible.
yeah.
But we made sure to have 2 episodes in the can, so the week we were out, the listeners can have a new episode, because we've been really, really consistent with that. Like, to make sure that there isn't a week or a time that we don't have an episode. It's funny because I think in season 1 or season 2, we had a few episodes that there were just technical difficulties. I think that he couldn't upload the episode
Yeah.
at like 7 in the morning or something. And people were starting DMing us, where's the episode? Where's the episode? And he's like, I'm working on it.
Like, calm down. God, people. Like, it's free content. You just you didn't pay for it, all right? But it speaks to what we've built, I guess.
Yeah, you cultivated an audience.
Yeah.
And they want those goods. They want that service. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know what the Que Bola podcast is all about, and excuse me, Pero let me tell you, it's so fucking.
I hope they know what the
Que Bola podcast is.
about.
And if they don't, they better
Que
learn.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yes,
This
hi.
is your host, Darwin Figueroa.
Yes.
Speaking.
Yes, and he is just one of the people that we freaking love. We just adore this guy. So
Bro.
you should know the Que Bola podcast.
The feeling is mutual, 110%, man. But for those who don't know, Pero let me tell you. So, like, how would you describe it in a nutshell? What's your, like, elevator pitch to people? Like, yo, listen to the Pero let me tell you.
So we're a current events podcast from a Latin American. When I mean American, I mean as like we were raised in the U.S. Angle, where we talk about, what does he say, about anything, everything, and nothing at the same time.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, all at once.
So it's like through the prism of Latinos raised here in the United States.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously it's very Miami centric because that's who we are. We have listeners actually all around the world, but we have a lot of listeners from all parts of the U.S. that maybe at one point were raised in Miami and moved away, and they love listening to our show because they feel they're right back at home. So we get that a lot. I think again, everybody, if you're Latin and you're listening anywhere else in the country, you could relate to it, but specifically if you're from Miami or South Florida,
it's Easter eggy.
Yeah, because we throw a lot of references, like ¿te acuerdas when we grew up and we used to go to Castillito, or Malibu, like that type of stuff, that if you didn't grow up here, you're not gonna get that reference. But
but it doesn't take away from the overall, the listening experience, which is actually a little bit what we were talking about earlier, where, unfortunately with radio becoming more, syndicated and generic, if you take away those things, those references, then you become nothing to no one. When you're trying to be everything to everyone, you become nothing to no one. So we really pride ourselves in keeping that Miami element, because that's what we are.
We're not generic.
We're not generic. We can't be.
For better, for worse.
Better, for worse. That's what you get.
I mean, it's dope though. I like how you guys are talking to like local Latinos, but at the same time bringing a coalition of like nationwide Latinos together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is like, it's super commendable, and at the same time it's one of those situations where like you really start understanding how big of a group we are, you know?
Yeah.
Because like being in Miami, you kind of get in that like bubble.
You take it for granted.
Oh, for
You take
sure.
it for granted. Like
Yeah,
everybody's
sure.
Latino as fuck here.
Oh yeah, even if you're not.
Even
Yeah.
if you're
Even
not,
if you're not, you are.
you exactly
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
have some white boyfriends, like straight up Anglo, but they know all the Spanish references. They know how to even speak a little Spanish. They
They'll
like
toss a coño out there.
They'll
like,
drink coffee.
exactly,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
coffee,
uh-huh.
Pastelito, pastelito
Yeah.
culture.
La
Croqueta culture.
ventanita.
Yeah.
cuisine. They love
Yeah.
Latin cuisine. So it's like they've kind of like assimilated into Latin culture, right?
Right.
So here, totally, you're in the bubble. You don't even recognize it. But like, it's really big when you step outside of here. When you go to like, I have a lot of friends in North Carolina. So when I go to North Carolina, I see all the Latinos, and they're all like, they're so like happy to see another Latino.
Yep.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like, oh shit.
Quick, that's one of ours. Come, you know. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Oh, here we go. Dropping
go.
Michigan.
Michigan.
When I was up in school in Michigan, because we have this joke that so many, because we talk about our experiences. So
Yeah.
obviously we talk about things that shaped us. And I'm constantly referencing when I was in school up in Michigan. But it's true.
If you're not driving, take a shot.
That's when
that's how-
when I lived outside of that bubble
Yeah.
for several years, and I was like, wait. Miami is its own thing, and
Yeah.
it's funny because prior to me moving to Michigan, I was in my early mid-20s. I think everybody who's from Miami gets to that point that they're over it. They're like,
Well, todo mundo le da la
I fucking
picazón.
hate Miami.
Like, yeah.
It fucking sucks. People are rude, this and that.
I mean,
but the
they're true,
moment
though.
you
Nothing
step
said
out,
was a lie.
the moment you step out, it's like, oh man, like I love Miami. I need to be back. Like, and I would tell everybody, yeah, no, I'm from Miami. And then it's funny because up there, people would say Ohio. I'm like, no, the real Miami, Florida.
Who thinks of Ohio when they say
Well,
Miami?
when you're in the Midwest.
No, but not
that,
even.
that is
bro.
not what Will Smith was singing about.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
but I got that a few times.
You got that Miami
yeah,
of
my
Ohio?
And I'm like, yeah, no.
Like, what?
Florida, the real Miami.
The fuck you thinking?
But that's when you really appreciate not only where you're from, because everybody appreciates where they're from,
Yeah.
but you realize the diversity and like really the culture we have here that is very, very unique.
Yeah.
And it's only here.
Okay,
our culture.
So I kind of wanted to speak to that because, like, so we have a very. I mean, we're all Latinos here, but we're not a monolith, right? So we have like different segments within the Latino community. Here, since there's so many of us, we kind of just like we don't really pay attention to it. It really becomes more accentuated when you go outside of the 305, right? When you go to like North Carolina, you're in
I was gonna say
Michigan, you're
Broward.
like. Like, yeah, anywhere basically outside of here. Like, through your podcast, I'm sure you're talking to a lot of Latinos nationwide, but how do we like bring something uniform together that we could all like say this is our thing, even if you're like you're red or you're blue or you're like all for like abortion or anti-abortion, all that stuff, like politics and everything aside, something that's like a common thread through all of us. What is it that we could like tie ourselves together?
I think we have, because
Okay.
I think that so here in Miami, even though it's largely Cuban, people that are Venezuelan are like very Venezuelan.
Right.
People that are Colombian are very like Colombia.
Yeah.
People that are Peruvian are very about Peru, and so on and so forth. And I think that people here are very big about their country of origin or
Yeah.
their heritage, but we have that like 305 sort of mentality and that 305 thread that threads us together.
Okay.
Whereas I think that in other places, and this is certainly the case in the West Coast, it's more like an umbrella, like somos Latino, right? It's more like an umbrella term, like we're somos Latino, and I feel that Miami, here everybody's very big on where they're from, and somehow it's dysfunctional, but it works.
I think it's because here we recognize that we are alike, but we're not identical.
Yeah.
And so, we have a similar language because sometimes, depending on the culture, you
Yeah.
say certain words and it goes all pear-shaped.
Yeah.
But, you have to recognize that, yes, we have similarities, but we're not carbon copies. We're
Right.
not, being 3D printed out of a machine somewhere. Whereas to your point, I think there's other places where it's like, oh well, you're Latino, and what that means varies from person to person, but that's okay because you're Latino.
You're Latino,
Right.
Or Latinx,
Right.
I see what you're saying.
As opposed to, oh yeah, no, soy Latino, which to me, even just saying it in Spanish is very different than saying it in English.
Yeah.
Pero soy de...
right?
República
Whereas
Dominicana,
here
Puerto
they
Rico,
ask you,
etc.
what are you? And like, soy colombiano. You're not like soy Latino. It's
Yeah.
like
Right.
because everybody here is Latino,
Exactly.
right?
That's
so,
why it's like, no shit. Like,
so everybody is very
About their-
where they're from.
yeah, exactly.
And I think also here, cuisine has a lot to do with it. Because, like, for example, in the last few years, Peruvian cuisine is like its stock has risen, and like, coño,
As
like
it should.
Peruvian food is like, oh my god,
It's good.
It's
It's
so
hella
good.
good, yeah,
It's so good. And here, there are a lot of Cuban restaurants. There are, but there's a lot of different restaurants. Oye, fritanga.
Yeah,
I mean,
fritanga's
come on,
the
who
shit.
doesn't love fritanga?
Why are you making me hungry?
Yeah.
Like, is that your goal
You
right
could get
now?
a whole, it's funny, Neri,
Queso frito.
Neri Sanz, the comedian.
Okay.
He's Nika,
Yeah.
and he's always like, bro, why is it that every time there's fried cheese, people are like, there must be a Nika here somewhere, and I'm like, well, you guys kind of
There are worse
They
things to be known
cornered the
for.
market.
they
Fried
cornered the fried
cheese.
cheese,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
it, bro.
If that's what you're gonna be known for, that's okay. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather be known for fried cheese than
Facts.
something
Yeah,
bad, right?
Big facts,
Like,
bro. Yeah, like that's something that nationwide I've noticed that us Latinos, because we have so many different tastes, and like my show's all about creatives, right? So, and especially like local creatives, but creatives that I've talked to, Latino creatives nationwide, they're so like into so many different fucking things, right? That you're just like, damn, you're Latin and you like that shit. But then at the same time, me thinking like, damn, why am I thinking that them being Latin is gonna stop them from liking a certain particular topic
Right.
or a certain thing, right? Like over here, since we so focus on the Latinism of our like Latino, of like our culture, we're always like, oh, salsa, bachata, merengue. But then if you're like, you find a group of like cholo goths, which I found the other day. There's an entire thing
that a
called
thing?
yeah, it's cholo goths. So they're cholos, but they like goth music, and they do like gothic themed music in Spanish cholo style. It's totally wild.
where
as
are they
fuck.
based out of?
It's
Because
wild.
I want to
LA,
go
they're
to there.
like out of
Okay,
LA,
okay.
yeah.
Next
that
time,
sounds like an LA thing.
next time we're in LA, we need to seek these cholo
Yeah.
goths out
Yeah,
because
that's
that's
like-
fascinating.
That's crazy, right? So it's like, I always wonder, I'm like, okay, what is it that, how could I talk to that particular Latino through our Latinism, but also be like, like put a highlight on those particular experiences that they're having that are so unique, but I'm sure some part of their Latinism is influencing it, right? Like there's something there that, I don't know, frijoles or some shit, food or something.
But I also think it's a coastal thing. I think being Latin in the West Coast is very different than in the East Coast, particularly in South Florida. It's a completely different thing. We were in LA a couple of years back. We did a series of episodes called Pero Let Me Tell You Goes West. And
Okay.
we had a great
remember
time.
that, I remember.
We were at
Portos?
we went to Portos. Well, we went to a lot of places, but we were in the Spanish Aki Presents podcast.
Okay.
And they were awesome. They hosted us. We were on their show, and I just think it's not a right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's very different to be Latin, I think, in the West Coast than it is in the East, particularly in South Florida. And I think that going to what we're talking about here in South Florida, there's a lot of shared experiences, whether it's something that's on TV, like una novela that everybody's freaking watching,
Yeah.
and you were watching as a kid, or like a song that's like really popular. And I mean, like here, like Pitbull is like a god here, and everybody freaking loves Pit. My mother loves Pitbull, you know?
He's playing in October 13 Hard Rock Casino.
Yeah.
Oh, coño. Okay.
And you know
There's
what?
that plug.
I just saw the big ass billboard literally today.
Do you have a promo code?
Promo code Que Bola
Que Bola,
podcast.
exactly.
Dale.
But you know what though? But that's something that like people hear because he is one of ours. People
Yeah.
hear very much like connect with. It's like, coño, it's Mr. 305, and I think I think it's a lot of things like that is like a thread that makes the culture here very specific and very unique.
But I think there's also something to not to settle too much on the Cholo Goths, but to bring it back to the Cholo Goths, I think there's also an element of like, just because in that case, I like goth music doesn't mean I have to stop being Latino, right? And so you by virtue of being you kind of pepper that in to that other interest or behavior or what have you, and I think that's just something that we do here by default.
Isn't there? I think you were
I see
telling
what
me
you're
that you were trying to get him on the show. Isn't there a Cuban or un Cubano that's a country singer?
Sammy Arriaga. Actually, he's been he was on the show. We did an interview with him. He's a Cuban American country singer. He's from Miami.
Yeah.
Based out of Nashville now. What he does with his country music is he adds elements of like hip hop. And then he's also done some, remixes of his songs with Spanish or Spanglish elements. So, I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think he's from like Huachete también. Like, it's not even like, Miami, like, almost Broward.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but this is who I am. Right. I love country music and I'm going to sing country music. I can do it. But why do I have to stop being who I am just because of a genre of music?
Right. Yeah, I know. I agree totally with that, man. I had a Cuban country singer on the podcast as well, Ricky, and he's also from like Hialeah.
Oh wow,
that's awesome.
That's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty Miami.
And he tours all Florida playing country music, and he has like the 10-gallon hat and everything. So yeah, like we could go into those various avenues, each one of us, those things that attract us, but our Latinness doesn't cease to exist. Right. It's one of those things where like our Latin flavor doesn't cease to exist, even if we're playing like a genre that's super Anglo, like fucking country, you know?
Right.
I mean, even country now has gravitated into hip hop.
Yeah.
Like look at little Nas X. Look at that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something completely out of left field. There's like no genre safe now. It's like everything is being intermixed, right?
We're not code switching as much.
We have this thing in South Florida because we have a continuous influx of Latinos, where it's like,
true,
and they're from all various walks of life and various parts of Latin America. Where I understand like the whole West Coast thing. A lot of the West Coast Latinos tend to be very like Central American or like Mexican, right? There's not too many like Caribbean or like Latin American, like further South American, type of like influence out there. It's heavy Mexican. My sister lived in San Francisco for 22 years, so I was going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went back and forth. I lived with her actually for a little time, and it was a fun experience. But I did notice that it's very heavy Mexican influence, right, and Central American style. Where out here we have a lot of Central Americans as well, but it's just like I think it's more evenly divided in terms of like representation throughout the city. Even though the Cubans pretty much are the largest population here in South Florida. Now, being that you guys talk to everybody through that vortex of Latinism, what is it that you guys tend to like hark in on, like that you really focus in on when you talk to a guest, like how do you try to bring in that, like when you're talking
I think a lot of it has to do with like the way you grow up, because I think that is something that no matter where you're from in Latin America or the Caribbean, family is very important. We're huge on family, all of us are. So I think that's a commonality that we all have, like living con la abuela and los 15 and the overbearing parents and all that. We all, la chancleta,
to some extent, we've all experienced that.
We've all, yes. And just to hear people's like origin stories, like where they grew up, and this was my house. Like, a couple of months ago, we had Gina Torres on the show.
Oh, that's what's up.
I love her. Like, I'm a super fan, of Gina Torres.
Se queda corto. He says I love her, and it's not enough.
What is it, 214, 13 episodes? I think in like 150 of those episodes, I professed my love for Gina Torres, and she was on my favorite show, Suits.
Okay.
And she was actually our dream guest.
Okay.
Like, and I was like, we're never going to get her.
Yeah.
Like, never. Like, why would Gina Torres be on our show? And we got her. And she said something that... And she's Afro-Latina and Cuban, right? And she said something at the very beginning that I thought resonated so well with me, but with all of us, that as a little girl, she used to love and dance and sing for her parents and her family and all that. Pero that's not what you're going to do for a living, right? Because eso es de gente barata. That's like bad people, like the entertainment business. You have to go to college. And that's so freaking Latin.
I mean, that's Latin as fuck.
But how many of the people we've interviewed who are actors or singers have that story?
Yeah.
That, we tell them, we're like, so how did your parents react? And I would say like maybe 8 out of 10 of them were like, at first, they were like, no. You got to go and you got to study, this, that. But it's such a commonality.
Is from the Bronx, and right. I was thinking, maybe, I don't know, since they're New York, they were a little bit more open-minded. Nope. And she would say that, like, her parents were like, no, tú estás loca, you're not going to study that.
I mean, I see that. I've heard that. And I understand the parents.
It's a rough life. I mean,
let me tell you.
For starters.
If you busted your ass, my parents came from Colombia. Your parents came from Cuba.
Yeah.
Didn't speak the language, moved to a place where nobody fucking knew you, and you were busting your ass to bring your generations forward, right? And then your kid turns out to say, I want to be a comedian. It's like, ¿qué coño is happening? You're like, my God.
When I was
like right here, me sacrifiqué
so when I was in
for
college,
that.
When I was in college,
exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
I purposely left my last 2 semesters of college with just electives. Like, I was like that guy that, like, for 3.5 years or 3 years didn't take a single elective because I was like, my last 2 semesters, I'm just gonna take electives. So I took my last year, I took theater. And I was actually pretty good in it.
Okay.
And I got, like, I even tried out for different things, and I got to, like, Theater 3, which that's what they used to call that at FIU at that time. And I was, like, going to audition for, I remember it was King Lear.
Okay.
And I remember telling my parents about this, and to say they were devastated was an understatement. Because I was like, tú sabes un muchacho tan inteligente como tú meterse actor. And I'm like, first of all, that's not my major. I'm not going to be an actor. I'm just taking theater in school.
I'm just taking a class.
I'm just taking theater, and I'm auditioning for a play. Like, I think they lost sleep on it because they kept bringing it up.
I mean, for sure, bro.
And just the thought that it's not something. The creatives are not supported with immigrant parents. But you know what? To piggyback on that, I think when you're first generation, there's a certain amount of pressure that you have. Of course,
for sure. You're the golden child.
That your parents,
you gotta make that sacrifice,
and
worth
that's a commonality. Yeah. That's a commonality. That your parents' sacrifice of coming here was worth it. That they got out of their native country and whatever struggles they had, to give you a better life, and now you are.
I mean, inevitably,
you're living it.
Yeah,
the family's always gonna win, right? Because, like, regardless, you came from Peru, from Brazil, Ecuador, whatever, your family and your lineage is gonna have a better life than they would have in said place.
Yeah, ideally.
But they want to see the reward. They want to see the fucking prize. They want to be alive.
They want to see progress.
They want to see the progress.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I want to get into a creative field. And they're like, what the fuck? Para eso yo me maté. Like, me sacrifiqué. I did all of that.
That's why I split it down the middle. I went into advertising. I was like, you know what? Creative, but also
it's tough,
business.
Though. It's tough.
So,
I mean, and it's something that, like, us Latinos, we have to overcome, where that's not even like something that other people even have to think about.
No. And it's funny because anybody that knows me really well knows that I don't believe in advice.
Okay.
Like, don't give me advice because I don't believe in advice. I believe that when you want to do something, you do it, you think about it, and you do it.
Okay.
Advice is just a confirmation of
what you're
right.
looking for.
I'm not the advice person. And I mean, he's known me for 30-some years. I'm a very determined person. Like, I know what I'm going to do. Whether it sucks, but I know what I'm going to do.
Whether it sucks.
Pero le gusta dar advice.
And well, people ask me for it, but I don't like receiving it, or I don't ask for it. And I can't say that, like, for example, my parents, I'm very, very close to my parents.
Yeah.
Very, very close. But I don't speak to my parents about life decisions. I never have. But I can't say that when I was thinking about my career choices, I did not factor in my parents because of that
pressure.
Yes.
Pressure.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes. That'd be like, oh no. Remember that remember my first major in college was journalism.
That's right.
Because I had come up from, like, in high school, I was, like, in journalism. I was a Silver Knight nominee. I was involved in all these things. So I was thinking, like, oh, no, my parents. My God-given talent is architecture.
Okay.
That is, like, my talent.
That's what he should have done.
Since I was a teenager, like 12, 13 years old, I started building scale models of buildings.
Okay.
And they would win, like first
At the
place
youth
at the
fair,
youth fair
yeah.
and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I never took a drafting class. And I remember when I was in high school, that you start thinking about
Yeah.
what you're gonna do. My father. Porque un arquitecto se muere de hambre. Porque mira el hijo de whomever. Because they
Yeah.
always know somebody.
Who's
Ese
that?
hombre no trabaja. They always know that one person that doesn't have a job,
Can I
right?
ask you a question? Where does that come from? Because architect is a career.
Yeah.
But it's funny you said, because in the New Father of the Bride, like when the Andy Garcia character is like young and he's like gonna be an architect, they tell him the same thing. They're like, te vas a morir de hambre. Eso va-" And I'm like, but I've never met like an architect who lives under a bridge he designed.
Right.
Like, I mean,
That must be some Latin American
And
shit.
you know
Maybe-
what?
maybe
and you know
that's
what?
what it
I
is.
have to tell you that I think that if I wouldn't have succumbed to that, I probably would have done that.
You would have been an
I
architect.
probably would have, because that's what I wanted to do. And it was so like, no, se vas a morir de hambre. You're too smart for that. Like, being an architect is
Yeah.
a walk in the park, right?
Yeah.
You got to take like 5 years of math.
Exactly.
And it's that pressure that you have when you're first generation.
First gener, bro. You're the golden child. You're the anchor baby. You're the one who's like trying
so many things.
So
yeah,
many
second
things.
generation, they're spoiled brats,
Facts.
entitled,
You
spoiled.
don't
I see
even
me-
know Spanish at that point.
Mis sobrinos yo son uno descarado. That's it.
Yeah.
Bro, it gets me.
I
it
love
gets
them.
Me upset. That really gets me upset. Not knowing Spanish as a second gener is like, man, bro, you can't even speak to your grandparents.
But that is when the language starts to ebb.
that's when it goes away.
That's
and
when
then
it
it's
starts to
like,
diminish.
You
and
become one of
diminish.
those, you know, Sabe kids.
So my kid, we made a very conscious effort to speak to him in Spanish. So up until he started preschool, he didn't speak a word of English.
Okay.
Y hablaba como una vieja cubana. Like,
was-
but obviously, when he started
School,
preschool,
yeah.
and he learned English in like 2 days, because when you're that young,
Yeah.
you're a sponge.
Yeah.
But that was the same with me. I
Yeah.
didn't speak English until I started preschool. He's in that phase now. It's like, oh, I don't want to speak Spanish. It's not cool.
Yeah.
But he speaks Spanish.
Yeah,
And
at
he
least
speaks
you
to
know
his
it.
grandparents in Spanish.
At
Yeah.
least you know how to handle yourself, how to handle a conversation. It's very tough, like to see that, like how it's basically like the erosion of like the lineage, you know. It's like erosion of like your tradition, you know. Like this is something that you come from. Like for example, myself, I come from Colombia, so like my kids would go back to Colombia and not be able to speak to like their cousins, like in Spanish. Like that's wild to me. It's like it's not even like 3, 4, 5 generations down the
Right.
road. It's just like, bro, you like your grandparents are like right there.
right
But
there.
you know what though? I do think though that, and this is a good conversation. I do think so, especially parents of first generation that now have second generation kids.
Yeah.
I do think that eventually they'll catch on, because I think that when you're a kid, I think about when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
I'm an immigrant. I came from Cuba when I was a year old.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know this was my culture until I was older. I just thought this was how it is, right? How the way you're raised and the customs you have. Just something as simple as a café, like
Yeah.
tomando cafecito, right? That's not something you really think about.
As
Que cuando,
culture. As a
kid.
cuando viene la visita, le haces café.
Yeah.
That's not something you really think about at all. That's just what they do at your house.
Yeah.
But I think there comes a point in your life when you're older and you start appreciating that. That's like, oh, that's my heritage.
Well,
that's my
100%.
culture.
What is it you said many times, like about Nochebuena?
Yeah.
Noche Buena.
Where Nochebuena, I mean, that's a big thing, you know, December 24th, Christmas Eve, and all of that. And it's just one of those things that you don't want to lose that tradition,
Yeah.
you know, whether it becomes smaller. Because I remember as a kid growing up, se hacía en casa mi abuelo, and it was like, you know, 30, 40, 50 people would show up. And now we do it at my sister's, and it's maybe 20, 15, you know, it's smaller, but
Yeah.
it's like, no, we're still going to do it because, damn it, that's a tradition. And then when we get older, the kids will
Yeah.
have that in their head, like this is what we do, quote unquote,
Yeah.
regardless of language, you know. But you keep that going, and it becomes even more important because we're not in our respective countries anymore,
Right.
you know. And for some of us specifically, I mean, I've told you this a couple of times, you know, like when you're Cuban American or Cuban, as your case, you got here and you had nothing. Right? So you don't have any physical hand-me-downs. You don't
Yeah.
have that, you know,
Heirloom,
that
family
heirloom.
heirloom.
That, thank you. Couldn't think of the word. I was like, you know, like the locket of your
Yeah.
tatarabuela, you know, that's been passed down, or the wedding rings that everybody gets. You don't have that.
Or even furniture.
For anything. So those traditions.
Oye, esos escaparates de last generation.
Oh yeah, seriously. You know what? I think they could probably come over the ocean. Like you just throw them in there, they'll probably float.
Bruh, I'm telling you, I've seen some furniture that's like heirloom furniture, and you're like, damn, that's some throwback. wood, what do they call it? Walnut wood type shit. That,
Yeah.
like, you can't even find this type of wood no more. Like,
No. There are like carpenters who don't know how to make that.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. You know.
Exactly.
But that becomes that. You know, that those
That's part of the
traditions.
culture, yeah.
Those traditions have to replace that lack of that tangible element because you don't have it and you never will.
But I think most kids now, I think they'll get there.
You think so?
Yeah, I think they'll get there when they realize. I
Well,
think
kids
it takes
grow up
you
a lot
while.
more about understanding their culture is not something to tamp down. You know, you were in the world now. I think there was a time where you assimilate.
Yeah.
You know, lose the language, change the last name. You know,
Yeah.
become American,
Because
and that's not the case as much
remember
anymore.
growing
you know?
up,
I see what
that's
you're
not
saying.
something that I embraced because I remember I used to watch like sitcoms.
Yeah.
You know, I used to watch Growing Pains, Who's the Boss, Full House, The Cosby Show. You know, and I'm like, they don't eat picadillo. They eat like meatloaf,
Right.
Or like I don't know,
Spaghetti meatballs.
right?
Yeah.
Like we don't eat that in my
Or
house.
getting an allowance.
Well, I got an allowance.
Oh, you got an allowance?
I
Wow.
did, I did, but because but I had to I had to do all the
Bruh,
chores,
what do
and
you
I would
mean?
get like $10 a week.
I do all that and I still wouldn't get shit. It's
Oh,
like
no.
you gotta go do all that shit.
But,
to live
but
here.
you know what?
but wait.
He's second generation.
I'm first generation. I'm 1.5.
One and a half because his parents came here when they were very young. They went
Yeah.
to they came
Oh, okay.
went to high school. here.
My mother came. I think she was like 10, and my dad was like 8 or
Okay.
9. So I mean, they grew up in this country
All right.
essentially. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I-
but like if you come straight from Latin America, there's no such thing as allowance.
No,
It's like you're doing that shit just because you're my kid. Like
and that's what you do. Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
you do.
That's your allowance.
That's
you
your
live in this
time.
house. Yeah.
You got electricity, you got AC.
But you know what? It really does give you a really interesting perspective because when I was a kid, I very much understood my parents' struggles. My dad had 3 jobs.
All right.
My mom used to clean houses up until I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
And I remember being 10 years old and I got my first pair of Jordans, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that it was so like,
like yeah,
my parents spent $100 on a pair of shoes.
I remember that.
Like,
Yeah.
I understood what they had to do to get me that. Where that I do think is a disconnect nowadays. Kids are like whatever. They don't even have
They
a
don't know,
concept
yeah.
of
Yeah.
where that came from. Like when I got a Nintendo, right? When I got a Nintendo. And I still have my Nintendo and my original cartridges. I only have like 10 of them.
Yeah.
Why? Do you remember how much cartridges were?
They were like
$75.
yeah,
No?
They were like
expensive.
50, 75
Yeah.
bucks. My parents couldn't be spending 75 peso, en un juego de
jueguito.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
But I remember when I got my Nintendo for Christmas was 1988. I was like, oh my God, this is my world, you
Yeah.
know? And I understood the sacrifices they had to make to get us there. Just like when we used to go to Disney World, 7 of us in a Cutlass Supreme. Like, I'm thinking back on it, like, I'm like, how does 7 people fit in that car?
Uncomfortably.
But somehow,
I remember those experiences. Likewise, my mom cleaned houses until I was probably like 14 years old. And like all those experiences you're talking about, I went through that. Like I remember the first pair of Nikes, not even Jordans, that my mom bought me. And I took care of that shit like it was, bro, I would put them on for 5 seconds and come home and clean them and put them in the box. I kept the box for almost ever. You know what I'm saying? It was like, and yeah, nowadays the kids don't understand the sacrifices that the parents have to go through to acquire those things, right?
Yep.
It's because I don't understand what it is. I know that in my experience, I physically saw what my parents were going through.
Right.
And I would also participate. Like when my mom would clean a house on the weekend, she would take me.
Right.
And she would be like, "Oh, coge esa basura, pónmela
my mom used to
afuera,
do the
this and
same
that."
thing,
Pero
like during
claro.
summer and all that.
Yeah.
You didn't have
Who's
an
gonna
option
take
to
care of
stay
you?
home.
You don't have
Yeah.
nobody to
Because
take
my
care.
grandmother used to go help out my mom clean houses.
Con
que te iba a quedar.
quedaba el niño.
¿Con qué te quedas?
¿Con qué te
Nobody?
quedaba? Yeah.
You go, how would you that? How you that? Oh, go get the mop, go get the water, go get this, all of that shit until like
And-
12
But that
years old.
instilled like for lack of a better word, like an immigrant work ethic in us, right? Because when slightly different situation on my end, but like my dad would do like side jobs. My dad worked for Bell South for years. Would do side jobs with like people who were buildings, and he would go run the cable. I would go. I could probably run a phone cable in a building to this day.
You
learn what it is to like. Okay, you want something, you gotta go and
Get it.
and
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
happen.
You know what
yeah.
I think also is a big difference, and maybe your experience was very similar, is that I also understood, when I was a kid, my parents didn't speak the language. And, at that point in time, they were immigrants. They had been here less than 10 years. They
Yeah.
had these, like, I got my mom clean houses. My dad had 3 jobs. He worked in a discount and all that. And I remember very clearly people taking advantage of them, and
Yeah.
how they were in many cases abused. Like, I remember my mom used to work at a place where they spent like a month and a half without paying her.
Oh, wow.
And cuando le pagaron era un cheque sin fondo.
Yeah.
And I feel that like those are stories that when you come from an immigrant family are very similar.
Yeah.
They take advantage of you. They think that because, whatever scrap they give you, you're going to be like, oh,
Yeah.
And I remember that. And I think obviously because that's not our experience
Yeah.
as first generation, we have more stability.
Yeah.
Right. That's something that in terms of our kids, they see less of that struggle.
It also builds up tenacity. It also builds up, like, you go through adversity very young.
Right.
Like, myself, I started working at 8 years old, bro. And I tell everybody, like, yo,
Shit.
you were working at 8? Yeah. My dad, literally, he would put me to work. He would take me, he worked for himself, like doing scrap metaling. And he would take me to the junkyard where he had all his scrap metal. And he would tell me, quita ese tornillo. And I would be sitting there all day taking off tornillos and all that shit to go sell aluminio, to go sell some aluminum or something like that. I was 8 years old doing this shit. And this was like, not like on the summers. I'm talking about like after school, after I did my homework, I would go fucking with my dad and go do this shit.
Yeah.
So it's like that builds up like that tenacity in you that I kind of like see go to the wayside like as the generations go by. It was like you don't have to go through that because you have another level of comfort.
But that's the goal, right?
Is it though?
But in
That's
the,
the thing.
in the sense is that every generation wants to improve upon the last,
100%.
right? So, my grandparents came to this country with with nothing, right? Like I'll use my mom's parents as the example. Like my mom will tell stories where like they would drive by like Coral Gables to look for like la gente que botaban like the used furniture because that's where you could find the nice furniture on the curb and you take it home
100%.
with you, right? I never experienced that growing up. We went to Rooms to Go,
Yeah.
right? But like, and now my nephews will go on freaking Wayfair or what, you know what I mean? Like, but the idea is that you don't want the next generation to have to go through that. But then what do you give up, or where's the balance?
Exactly.
Where's the balance of it, right?
But you have to be conscious about it because I know that with my kid, and obviously I spoil my kid in a way that my parents couldn't spoil me.
Yeah.
But I check myself very quickly with that because like my parents, ay, le vamos a comprar el niño esto. I'm like, no, you brought a niño last week this, and he played with it for 5 minutes and then he lo tiró.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't need to bring him something.
Yeah.
And even me, sometimes I catch myself in the store and I'm like, oh, like he was really into SpongeBob last year or some time ago. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get him this of SpongeBob. I'm like, no, he has like 10 things of SpongeBob.
Yeah.
He doesn't need another one.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to check yourself.
It's a very hard thing to like traverse being a Latino after the first generation because like your template is not gonna work for here for the United States. Your template is your parents who are doing it just getting here and just learning how it is. Now it's you taking over. And you have to push the generations forward. You don't have that template. You don't know how to like keep that hardcore tenacity and all of that grit, but at the same time, like provide them with all the comforts of being of an American like kid. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty hardcore with that. I like when my kid was born, I put him in one of those college plans.
Yeah.
But it's $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not getting a full ride.
Yeah,
Here
like,
you go.
figure it
Here's
out.
some seed money.
Yeah.
You go on and you do what you want.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, rightfully so, people want to do the safety net for their kid, and it's like a double-edged sword because you do want to prep them, and they don't have to worry about like if they could afford a book or something, but tampoco you don't want them to be so entitled that it's like, yeah, my parents are gonna pay for my college. It's like, no, you're not.
My sister did the same thing. She's like, we'll help you where we can, but that's on you.
And it takes away that incentive. If you do everything for your kid because you want them to have a better life than you did, then you're taking away incentive for them to do anything.
Not just that you've raised a useless person.
But you know what?
You've raised a burden on society.
But going back to what we were talking about, Latin,
like you have
about the Latin experience, I'm very, very happy and fortunate that I went through that. That we went through
without
that.
a doubt.
Yeah,
bro.
I see it now on the other side, and I'm like, that was formative AF.
Yeah,
100%. Because that really, really put something in you that when you're around other people, as you say, Caucasians, it's like, mira, I've said this story on our show a few times.
Yeah.
And this was one of the times that, it was very obvious to me that even though in my particular case I could be white passing until I open up my mouth, it's not the same, and they're never gonna see you the same, right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
I remember that some years ago, there was somebody I was close to, and their parents came from money, very affluent, white, very Connecticut, very whatever.
They couldn't be more of a wasp if they had a nest.
I remember that we were talking about that time about my law career and my office and all that stuff, and where I had gone to school. And somebody in his family tells me, "Oh, honey, are you the first person in your family to go to college?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Would you have asked me that if my last name would have been Smith?
Yeah.
Right.
Of course you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Right? But because I'm an immigrant, you think that we're all like analfabeto, right?
Yeah.
That,
just got off the horse yesterday.
Could barely read and write.
Yeah.
So the fact that I went to college must have been quite like he made
Like
it
the
to
village
college.
carried him there,
Wow. And I struck back with a good one. I'm like, actually, no.
Yeah.
Actually, my brother is the global branch manager for one of the, at that time, Bank of America.
Yeah.
My cousin is an Emmy award-winning journalist, and my other cousin was like a brother of mine. He's the head of MIS for the biggest health system in South Florida. So actually, I'm the underachiever of the group. Así para callarla.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how dare you? Like,
That's how they still view Latins that way.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I myself, as an Afro Latino, I still go places and people don't even know I'm Latin.
Yeah.
They'll look at me and they'll be like, "Where the fuck is this guy from?" Wherever I step into a place, people are always trying to figure out where the fuck I'm from.
Yeah.
And they can't pinpoint it, so it kind of bothers them. So then when I start speaking Spanish, they'll be like, "Oh my God." One of those, and I could see it. I could see their face, like, "Oh shit, this guy speaks Spanish."
Isn't that the worst thing though, where it's like where it bothers them because they can't put you in the box?
Yeah.
That's
because
my whole
that's
life.
what they want. That's what they
my
want.
life.
They
Or-
want
or-
once you open your mouth and you speak Spanish,
They can
then
put you in a box.
now they're comfortable. They're like, oh, he goes here.
And,
Yeah,
and
right.
you're-
Yeah, he's a
and
Latino.
you're
there.
Afro-Latino.
Right.
But then the flip side is when you're white in Latin, it's like, oh.
That's even crazier.
Oh, but you're white. And it's like, yes, because we come in different shades.
Yes, we're not a monolith. There's a bunch of us from top to bottom, man. I've been going off on that shit. I've talked to you guys about it.
And thank you for ringing that bell because you've been doing it and it needs to be said.
It really annoys the fuck out
I
of me. Like,
mean-
it so annoys me that this point in time. That's like, for example, we talked about it on our show 2 weeks ago. That bullshit that Jill Biden said, and I realized that wasn't even her. That was her speechwriter. But nonetheless, somebody in the group.
Yeah.
That bullshit
Political
of like
writer.
the tacos, the breakfast tacos of San Antonio.
Yeah.
And what did she said? Budiga.
Bodegas.
Bodegas.
Instead of
Yeah,
bodegas.
right. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, we're still doing that?
Or
when
they're
you're-
trying to pander, and they feel like that's pandering.
But they're not even doing it right.
They're not
Right,
even
they're
doing it
They're not
right.
even
They don't
doing
know
it
how to
right.
do
Coño.
Right?
Like, if you're gonna pander, at least make the effort.
And you're
Yeah.
talking about people that are progressives,
Yeah.
and I'm in that group.
Yeah.
You're talking about people that are qualified to do this job. They didn't just pull
They're
somebody
educated.
out. The person who wrote that speech is somebody who's in politics, right?
But I still feel, look, we could traverse into this space, but I feel like a lot of progressives are like these not in my backyard progressives.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
for
it's
sure.
Like
everything
white
is-
guilt is
Everything is great and progressive if you fucking do it over there.
right.
Right.
As long
But
as you're in
over
your
here-
bodegas.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
For
over
sure.
here, don't be progressive.
For sure.
Like,
For sure.
in my fucking backyard and in my neighborhood, I don't want that
That's
progressiveness. It's
interesting.
Like,
You're saying that because
like,
that's
what?
one of the things.
That's exactly it.
So I'm, as you know, I'm very involved in politics,
Yeah.
and specifically progressive politics, and that's actually one of the things that a lot of people talk about in terms of California.
Yeah.
California has the highest percentage of progressive and liberal elected officials and city leaders and all that, and yet it has one of the biggest issues with homelessness and with public
saw that when I
housing
went a
and
couple years ago.
affordability and all
Yeah.
that, because a lot of people, because exactly what you said, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Oh no, we need affordable housing, but don't build it down the street from my house.
No, that
Build
would bring
it
down my
somewhere else.
property.
Yeah, there's a
value.
desert over there. Just put
Right.
it there.
Yeah, it's,
You know?
that on with everything.
Yeah,
it's not
because-
only
yeah.
housing. It's like
Because
with
If only,
fucking
it was
because
just housing.
you gotta live your values. That's something I did a rant a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
when the whole thing with Roe versus Wade came out. I'm like, you gotta live your values. If you say that you're for this,
Yeah.
You know what? And they're going to build it down your street, and it's going to give people a chance to live, in a better place or like affordable housing. Support it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if down the street, and I own my house.
Yeah.
If down the street from my house there was a plan for affordable housing, it was a legit plan with like, okay, I want to see budgets and I want to see plans
and infrastructure.
And I want to see the infrastructure. Legit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if they do it. See, hago bien hecho. Like, I wouldn't mind if they do it because you gotta give people a chance. But, but people don't live their values.
They don't. It's a lot of like, it's this veneer, and I feel like social media has perpetuated that even more. It's like I don't feel like people used to be as I'm about this than as they are now. Like back in the day, people maybe had like one or two things that they were about, that they were
bumper sticker.
Exactly.
Right.
But they weren't like, this is me, and da-da-da. Now it's like you're putting it everywhere. It's like this. Like me, I have a big thing about climate change, right?
Yeah.
Climate change is huge on my list. Second,
Really,
on
we
my
hadn't
list,
noticed at all.
it's like, you can tell what the fuck I'm thinking about. Integrating Latin media, getting all of us on the fucking screens. That's one of my things. Second thing, climate change. Things that are important, right? Like, we're going to fucking all disappear in like 20, 30 years.
Speaking of climate change, this past week when we were on the cruise, I was watching nonstop BBC International because I love BBC, but here in the U.S. on the Fire Stick, you could only get BBC U.S., which is really frustrating. I was watching International. Dude, Europe was on fire.
Yeah,
it was like literally on fire.
In flames.
It was like 107 in London.
Yeah.
In freaking London.
Yeah.
And they were saying that, London doesn't have the infrastructure to support such hot weather.
They don't have HVAC systems there.
Yeah, because it's usually very cold there. And I was even reading on how, like, in France, in southern France, it was also on fire. And the Bordeaux region, which is like
where the
wine
wines
comes
are,
from,
yeah.
it's like their Napa Valley.
Yeah.
The fires haven't come to the Bordeaux region yet, but they're adjacent.
Yeah.
So they were even saying how that's going to affect the taste of the crop.
Yeah, it gets drier air, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's like,
No, the caviar is burnt.
no, but there's still people
bro,
that are deniers or just don't give a fuck,
I feel like everybody just don't give a fuck.
I think it goes.
That's true.
But I believe I agree with you. I don't think it's a denying thing. I think a lot of people are just like, I'll be dead by then.
No, I think we talked about it when you were on our show a couple of weeks ago when you co-hosted.
Yeah.
I think there's people that care now, but I think the majority of people are going to care, as what we talked about when you were on our show, when it starts affecting their wallet.
Yeah.
When their property value
Como
now
todo.
went down, when their insurance has quadrupled, or they won't insure them at all. Now it's when
Who left Florida the other day? There was another insurance
Yeah,
company.
they're dropping like flies.
Yeah.
And that's without a major hurricane.
Right. Oh yeah. We're still like, knock on wood. Lucky.
We haven't had an Andrew since '92, and Andrew went through Homestead, bro. I was talking about this with one of my good friends this week, and I was like, "Yo, if there's an Andrew go through the major corridor of Miami, like where the major population centers are,
Done.
we're pretty much fucked. We're like, not only are we fucked, but no insurance carriers are gonna come here.
Pack
I
up and
don't
go.
know how you gonna insure your crib? Literally, who the fuck is gonna insure your crib? Like, they'll be like, okay, we're out. Next one, you guys handle it yourselves. And then
Or
the next one comes or some shit, and
You're gonna have to pay quadruple.
I mean,
You know?
if you could afford it.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
At
Like
that
yeah.
point.
these are the
But
options.
it's always good to see like people, like you, Luis Aguirre.
Yeah,
eh,
Luis Aguirre big on it.
Andrew Otazo.
Oh yeah, Andrew
Otazo,
Otazo's
yes.
a freaking that guy.
he's been
Taking
he's
out
been
all
here.
the trash from the mangroves.
Yes.
Bro.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that guy's legit. I've gone
Boy,
to
he
two
got
of
stranded.
his. I've got to two of his cleanups, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how he could do it.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I don't know, an hour into it, I'm like, I can't. Like, okay,
Sweltering
it's-
hot.
Yes,
heat, yeah.
yes.
You're in the mangroves.
You're in
bro.
the mangroves.
Yeah.
Like you could touch the humidity.
Yeah, you can see that shit. It's like fuck. Yeah. It's tough, man. One time for Andrew Otazo in the Miami Creation, man.
Oh,
because
Andrew's
it's
awesome.
like,
It's phenomenal.
yeah, but like that's something that's prominent, right? So those are like my two things that I know I'm talking about, that I'm about. And everything else I have opinions on, but it's not like I'm fiery about it.
Right.
But it seems like everybody's fiery about every fucking thing now.
Because everybody's clout chasing.
Yeah.
Everybody's but then you're not really putting in any effort
But
to any
because
of
they,
it.
because
I
they
agree.
base their everybody
with you.
now, and every time I go on my, you've seen my
Yeah.
rants online. Every time I go on a rant, I'm like, people base their political opinions nowadays on memes.
Yeah.
They see a meme, that sticks to them, and that's it. They make their position. Or I love when people are like, I did my research. And what was your research? You went to a Facebook page of somebody that thinks like you. That is your research.
You went into your own bubble.
Right.
Echo chamber, and you said, oh, this is my research.
And that's for both sides.
Good luck.
Yeah,
that's for
it's
both
for
sides.
everybody. It's like,
that's for both sides.
if you're not really being a critical thinker, which is the biggest thing I feel is missing in the education system, is they're not teaching kids to be critical thinkers.
And it has and I think that you really have to be a critical thinker, especially when you're among your tribe, because that's something that I've clashed with people in my tribe, because and we've talked about it on our show about the term Latinx.
Yeah.
It's like I was in last year I was part of a like certification for like by the Democratic Party to work in politics, and most of the people there were white from like the Midwest, like Wisconsin, Minnesota, young, like 21, 22 years old. When you think you know it all and you're gonna run the world. And I remember that one time we were talking about that term, and we were like in a like chat,
like a breakout
room, exactly. That's the word I was looking for. And they kind of all attacked me for saying that because I don't like that term. I don't like to use that term for myself. If you want to be called Latinx, I will call you Latinx until the cows come home. But I don't identify with that term. And they were all like not telling me off, but they were all like, well, the English language evolves, and the camera moved.
Yeah,
the language, the English language evolved, and that's an evolution, and blah 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 blah. And the first time I heard that term was, and I remember you were the one who pointed it out, was with people that were trans in the trans community, and they preferred that word. Well, I'm not trans, so I shouldn't be taking up that space as to who should use that term or not. But I am Latin. I was born in a Latin American country. So Rebecca from Wisconsin, you are not going to tell me in my space what I should identify as. You know what? And if you think that my term is not progressive enough, you know what? F you. Because that is the ultimate form of privilege.
White guilt.
That is the ultimate form of privilege, that you think that you know more about my tribe and my people and my culture and my heritage than I do.
Yeah.
It's like, who do you think you are?
That's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, who do you think you are? I respect if you want to be called that. I will call you that. But don't give me
You're not going to tell me what I need to be.
Don't tell me I'm not woke or progressive or I'm backwards, because I don't like that term as to my heritage.
Yeah, it does. I mean, to me, it's really never made sense. It's because like it doesn't come from us. It's like if it comes from us, then then use it. Like that's something that we're trying to push forward. But if it comes from another place, it's like that's not us. That's something that was
Dile a tu
created
familia
for us.
colombiana. Oye, ustedes saben que somos ahora Latinx. They'll be like, oye.
They'll send you to fucking hell.
Cállate,
They'll be
que de
like,
que
yo,
tú
shut
hablas.
the
They will pull you back to Colombia for a couple of weeks to reindoctrinate you, to just get it out of you.
And this ties back to what we spoke about at the beginning. Every single poll that overwhelmingly that has been taken among Latins show that they prefer to be identified from their country of origin.
100%.
Right?
Colombiano, peruano,
So,
exactly.
right, or even Latin or Hispanic. But stop it with this bullshit. This is not what people like. Are there certain people that identify with it? Sure.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But don't. It's like Fetch from Mean Girls.
It's like,
It's not going to happen. Don't force it on people. And if language really does evolve, it evolves organically. It doesn't evolve like forcing it down somebody's throat.
Yeah,
and,
man.
These
are like the various like things that are affecting the Latin community, right? Like how we're talking about like Latins not being able to go into creatives because they have that like that guilt, and these are all things that like not only but primarily affect us, right? Because like we all share these experiences. Now, moving forward, like we're going into 2022, right? 2023.
Yeah, I was going to say, 2023 is around the corner.
Yeah, we're going into 2023. I feel like the Latin community here is coalescing in the United States. Like we're all starting to like know we're here type of situation where like we're not just segmented. Like before, it's always been fragmented and segmented. I feel like we're all coming together. I've been having a lot of like discussions with creators from Texas, Houston. I've had a couple from like Wisconsin. Like it's like Latins from different parts that are like finding other Latins doing creative things or in media in general. How do we as a collective bring that forth, because we're both in media. Like, you guys are in media, I'm in media, we're both Latinos. Obviously, we're from Miami, so it's like everybody here's Latino. So we all like, we don't even think about it. Like, I'm just gonna collab with you guys because you my boys. You know what I'm saying?
Right, not because we're Latino, but because we're
Exactly.
right.
But if it's like a nationwide thing, I'm gonna try to look out for another Latino if I'm gonna collab on something, you know, in Tennessee or some shit like that.
Because I think, and you could probably speak to this more than I can, because I think that finally the content out there, whether it be, you know, like podcasts or even sitcoms, you know, or and so on and so forth, is finally being done by creatives that are Latin. So it's by Latin, and not only by Latins, for Latins. I mean, it's for everybody, but it finally has an authentic voice. Whereas before, you know, again, this is something we always say in our podcast, when you would have content that was written by like white Caucasians about Latin people, be like, "Que caliente está esta fiesta?"
Yeah.
That's not Spanglish. That's barely Spanish.
It's like, who speaks like that?
Nobody.
Because that was what they thought we are.
Yeah.
And it's always wrong.
Yeah, 100% is always wrong. They're not, you know, they're part of the culture.
No, I mean, and we still got ways to go, but you know, I think there's to piggyback off of what you're saying. You know, Latinos have always been, you know, it's like, oh, the what is it, the majority minority, right? Like, I forget the year now. We're gonna be like, you know, X amount of the percent of the population, et cetera, et cetera. And what we're seeing now, I think, is, you know, that representation more authentically, like you were saying, because we're also not just. There's a certain degree of democracy to content creation now with you know, the YouTubes and the Instagram.
Yeah, there's no more gatekeepers.
Right. So we are like, oh, wait a minute, we can actually have our podcasts are the perfect example of that, right? Where it's like, no, I'm going to tell you what it is like to be a, you know, Colombian American in Miami, because that's what I am, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that, right? Like, nobody's going to come and be like, oh, here's the script changes for what, you know, focus groups have said. You know, you're not Colombian enough, you know? Like,
I wish somebody would say that shit to me.
But that's what would happen before. I mean, like, and again, I'm going to go way back in the Wayback Machine to I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
Right? Desi Arnaz was literally one of the producers of the show, okay? We're not talking that he was just a hired actor. Like, he owned the damn show, okay? Whenever they show these snippets of, like, you know, oh, my family from Cuba. Oh, we went to Cuba. It's like, I didn't know Guadalajara was in Cuba. Because it's like, you know, it's very Mexican,
it's sombreros
right? It's sombreros and piñatas and it's that, right? Cut to now, where literally I was just reading, actually, Jenny Lorenzo posted, because her co-host on the Hyphenated podcast, Joanna Hausman, I believe is her name, she's half Venezuelan, either half or full Venezuelan. She's working right now with a studio at Disney Channel for an animated original that the leads, the family, is going to be Venezuelan. A cartoon on Disney. The family is. It's not going to be that they're going to. I mean, maybe I'm sure they might eat an arepa, you know, but it's not that, right? It's just they're going to be speaking English. Yeah. But the family son Venezolano.
But you know what? That's a great example.
That would have never happened.
Encanto.
Encanto's the best, bro.
Yeah.
Encanto, like, Disney's doing it right.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck.
Encanto is unapologetically Colombian without it being like, we're Colombian people. This is how we live.
It was like authentic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, this is who we are and that's it. This is
how it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're just telling a story in this space.
Right.
That's basically like the spaces. Normally, if we weren't here, this is how it would go down. But we're just telling the story in this space.
Yeah.
And a lot of Disney, once again, is like taking charge. A lot of other media companies are doing that. Unfortunately, like I always say, Univision and Telemundo are on the wayside in the back. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're on some sleeping giant type shit.
They're the Napsters of.
But wouldn't you also say
that they're going to get left behind eventually?
But wouldn't you also say that Univision and Telemundo? Maybe you could speak to this better. They have a much older demographic.
That is true. That is true. It is an older demographic, specifically Univision. They have the lion's share just by virtue of being around the longest in terms of just ratings and all that. But it does skew much older. To Telemundo's credit, take that with a grain of salt. I love you, Telemundo. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Telemundo.
Fuck you, Telemundo.
I'm not trying to say that's it.
That's me.
The views expressed by Darwin are not the views of. Let me tell you.
When you see me in the street.
But, you know, what they're trying to do is they are trying to skew younger. You know, it compared to Univision is what I'm saying. I'm talking about the two big ones, right? Now, are they doing it Are they doing it properly?
It's 2022.
No. No. I'm
okay?
not. But I'm not.
It's
I'm not.
20.
Are they trying to skew younger by having exlatón?
Are they
Right.
Are they dragging their feet on
Right.
this like a motherfucker?
Now,
Yes.
the problem with that is that they're still, to your point, both of them are still holding on to an old business model, which is we are Spanish language and Spanish language, and that's it, and we cannot get out of this box. But they are thinking we're Spanish language 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Right. And you know what's so...
And I think sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one of the biggest, and this is not even recent-ish, but I know you remember this. Years ago, Telemundo was their first attempt at original programming, right? Was that they were going to do reboots, or not reboots, but Spanish versions of English language shows.
Estamos Unidos? I remember that
No,
one.
not even that.
No, like the voice one.
No, I'm going way back. What was the first thing that they did? They went back to 1974 and they grabbed Simon and Simon and Charlie's Angels and they
Ángeles en Ángeles.
and
Yeah, I remember that.
Reyes y Rey, Reyes y Rey, and
Yeah.
Ángeles.
Yeah.
And what they did was they dusted something off from 1970 whatever,
With Cristian de la Fuente.
dressed
I
them
remember
up
that.
in the clothing of
Yeah.
the late
Yeah.
90s. And now that was their attempt to modernize. And so even when they're trying to modernize, they're doing it from a template that is a good 20 years old.
And like, for example, Telemundo now, going to what you're saying in terms of content, they're running Turkish soap operas, which are huge hits. They make them money, but it's not even original content. It's a Turkish soap opera that's dubbed in Spanish. So it's
Right.
like, I feel that it's...
Okay,
and
now.
they have
like,
to change because
here you go.
because you know what? If they've got... Oh, I think this turned off.
Oh, yeah, that's all good. You still got that.
All right. No, because, now, especially because Telemundo's part of NBC.
Yeah.
So you would think, okay... they're part
NBC
of-
Universal's doing great
they're,
things
they're,
on the
they're doing
English
good.
side.
They're doing good. They're making progress, shall we say.
They're bringing in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly.
I
But
don't understand what Telemundo's doing.
if you want that to translate, especially now with Peacock, tienes que ponerte la pila.
I mean, but they're...
Because streaming is not going to wait for you to catch up.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
But what I'm saying is, great, Telemundo, you're trying. Okay, pat on the back. But you're in the streaming world now.
Yeah.
And streaming is not going to wait for anyone.
Yeah. I mean,
So you need to just jump those hurdles and get to where you need to be and go talk to NBC, how they're doing it,
I mean, they are
and
NBC,
bring it
that's
over.
what I'm saying.
Pero bueno, talk to whoever's in,
There's the guy, Bo Ferrari, on top of NBC, on top of Telemundo and
has receipts.
Univision.
Yes, he does. Yes,
okay,
fair.
Bo Ferrari, he's running that.
Both
So-
of them?
Yeah, he runs
Oh,
both.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
He
I thought
runs
it was-
Telemundo and Univision. This guy's the guy at the top. Outside of that, the next person over is NBC Universal. So it's like he might not be making programming decisions because, of course, he's not.
The buck
making-
stops with him, though.
But the buck stops with him, right? You have this 1950s template where you say, okay, we're gonna cater to these people. But that's even in the 1950s, there were Afro Latinos and there was indigenous people and there was
Because-
like a whole entire spectrum.
But the 1950s was a whole other
look,
scenario
but I
of
think-
racism
I
and
think-
discrimination.
I think with what you're going, I think
I
that
mean,
what-
there was layers upon layers upon
I
layers
think
of
that what you're
discrimination
saying,
going on then.
Darwin, and again, I think I mentioned this when you were on our show, and I'll make the parallel to it again. It's kind of like here in Miami. I told you when you go
Yeah.
to South Miami Hospital where the elevators are.
Yeah.
They have a whole wall of the board of directors of South Miami Hospital. There's like 30 of them.
Yeah.
And of the 30, 28 are white men. There's like the one black guy and the one woman.
Yeah.
Right? And the other ones are white. That's clearly not representative of Miami.
Of course.
Right? At
Yeah.
all. And I think that extends over to corporate America. Yes, we are filling up more spaces, but we're still not in that like top executive level. And if until you don't have people in those executive positions, it's harder. And I'm going to bring it back to something Gina Torres said when she was on our show. So Gina Torres, when she auditioned for the show she's in now, Lone Star 911, which is on CBS.
Okay.
Right? So on Fox, I'm sorry. This is a major network
major
show,
network.
right? She told the I guess the executive producer or whatever that she wanted her character to be Afro Latina because Gina Torres always plays black, like African American, right? And she said it on her show that the producer was like, you know what, you're right. What does that mean?
But they didn't assume that they knew.
Right?
Exactly.
But the fact that they didn't know, and
I
they
mean,
don't-
but at least they catered to it, and
They did.
and they were like, okay, let's try to.
They were
figure
willing
this
to
out.
hear.
So credit,
Exactly.
is due. But the fact that they You know, it's like you're.
But I mean, in the I give all of that away. I understand that. But within the Latin community, you're not dumb. Within the Latin community, you know the demographics. You see the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
You see, like, there's a UCLA entertainment report that comes out every year. They talk about diversity in media, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
They say clearly, like, everybody who's watching anything, if they see anybody that they associate with and they will stick to it longer than anything else.
Oh yeah, that's
These are like-
psychology.
Psychology, like, bro, there and then you look at the Latin American population, over 40%. It was like 38%, close to 40% of Latinos self-identify as Afro-Latinos or as mulattoes or in this. It's like this is almost half of all the Latinos here in the United States. There's 140 million plus Afro-Latinos in South America and Central America. Like, these are huge demos, bro. It's not like, I'm not talking about like little baby demos.
Right.
I'm talking about huge motherfucking demos that are completely being ignored. Like, you don't even exist. And it's and on the one side where they could make automatic change is in the nightly news, because news is daily, and you have somebody there daily and anchor. They bring in one Afro-Latina, she's barely seen, with Jorge Ramos on the Univision thing, and it's like, oh, we're diversified. No, my dog, like. That's not there's not one Afro-Latino in the demo. Like, at least.
Oh, we covered him. We're good.
We're good.
Phew. Like, yeah.
It's like, it's like these big gaps that they're just, it seems like they're purposely ignoring, because there's really no other explanation for me. For you to ignore such a big ass demo who could make you so much money, it's just like, why are you doing this? You're either racist, which I don't think everybody's racist. But if you're doing it purposely, continuously, then it's gonna lead me to say, "Fuck, that's some racist shit right there." You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure there's an element of that. I'm not gonna take away that. But I think there's also something to be said of, like, you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And if I'm saying, if it's not even on your radar, you're not even gonna think about it.
That's why.
And then on the flip side, what's even worse, in my opinion, is when they try something once.
And they're like, oh, we tried it.
We tried it and it didn't work.
Because
that happens to me all the time in my day job with advertising. Okay, my background is multicultural marketing.
Okay.
Whenever we do multicultural marketing to reach Hispanics, we have to, I'm client side now, but we would have to go and fight for those dollars, from the client to give us to put together an actual multicultural campaign. And on more than one occasion, what I would hear is, no, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't really work.
10 years ago. That's wild.
You mean to tell me that in 10 years, you haven't even thought about doing it again? That maybe you did it wrong? That maybe you just didn't have the right campaign? You didn't have the right concept? You weren't have the right market reach? Whatever the case may be. But they did it once. And I don't even know what didn't work means, right? Because when you do something for the first time, you can't expect the results of something you've been doing for 75 years.
Yeah.
You have to give it 5 years, time.
You gotta give it some time to drip.
Build.
Yeah.
Right?
Start dripping.
But
dripping,
I
dripping.
think,
and they're quick to pull the plug.
You need a diversification of the boardroom.
That's where it's at.
I think it is. You need a diversification of the boardroom, and I think that boardrooms across different, entities, not just entertainment, are still filled with like white men.
Yeah. And the really sad part is that representation matters. And where you see yourself the most is in media, you know? And if, like, me as an Afro-Latino kid growing up, I didn't see nobody on the television that I could aspire to be like, oh, my God, that's somebody who's, like, doing shit, you know? And that's a sad thing. And it's 2022. I understand back then. It's not even right back then. But I understand that the time was different and it was fucking whatever.
Dude, esta novela.
Fine.
Whatever the fuck happened then, it happened then. It's 2022.
Almost 2023.
Almost 2023.
These soap operas that were so popular in the 80s and 90s, even the early 2000s, where they would put like the indigenous people as like illiterate,
like
or like
dumbasses.
La Bruja, or like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, we love Thalia, but it's like, man, Thalia's soap operas like
were very egregious.
If you look at it from that perspective, they're racist as fuck.
Yeah, like, you're like, what the fuck? Why do all the indigenous?
Hello, pero Corazon was basically a mammy.
Yes.
I mean, she was a Mexican mammy.
That
was Marimar.
Yeah, that she was actually Cuban. She was Afro-Guana, and
She was a mammy.
Yeah,
That's
and
fucking
that
crazy,
this was
bro.
in the late 90s,
This is
and
wild. And the thing is that I always feel like like American culture is progressive and moving forward, but Latin culture stays stuck in the same.
Why do you think that
same-
is?
I don't know, bro.
Because
really,
I do feel that way as well, and I don't know the answer. That's why I'm
I think
really
I think it's a
never-
more conservative culture. I think religion has a lot to do with it.
I don't know, bro.
I think it's a lot of factors. It's a lot of factors.
I mean, it's tough to like pinpoint it, but it's just the old guard doesn't give up quick. Doesn't give up they don't. They just they will fucking until they're in the grave, type of situation. So it's like I feel that has to do with it, but also like at the same time, like Latinos, we don't focus on those things. We're like so focused on getting it and like trying to come up that things like representation in media and things like that, they don't really register as much as they should. Because we're not aware of that. We're like, oh, we're trying to put the food on the table. We're trying to buy a house. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. All those other things, those are objectives that my children might have to deal with.
Yeah, but I think
That's fair.
to what we're talking to, and it goes to what you're saying, and we could talk about this because we're Latin, so we could talk about ourselves like
Yeah.
this.
We
can talk
But
about all the shit we want about our own people, damn it. That's what it comes down to.
If you come to think about it, it's backwards in so many ways because Latin media, particular, still has shows that are super, objectififiable of women.
100%.
100%. Sometimes I see that and I'm like,
And they're the protagonists.
and I'm like, oh shit, like I look at it, I'm like, okay. Do you really need the half naked woman at like 4:00 in the afternoon? Like, I mean, let's really think about the basics here.
That's so Latin.
And that's something that you would never see on English television.
Never like fucking what was that? A la cama con
Con
porcel.
Porcel, we were talking about the other day, yeah.
That's just wild, bro.
That shit went out with Dean Martin, my friend.
That show was wild. And even to this day, I see shows like on Mega TV where like there's a guy like talking and there's like
Pero Mega TV is the worst.
there's a girl in a G-string doing her fucking
the worst
thing.
offenders, Mega TV.
It's like
But on all fronts, and even like with like gay characters,
Yes.
it's like every single like gay trope and
It's-
stereotype.
They're always a hairdresser.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's always
yes.
like, I don't know, 2 generations behind.
yes, bro. Us Latinos, we're slow when it comes to those social movements, bro. Like we need to, but like that's what we're here for because maybe like our parents are in that situation, but we're aware of both worlds. We're aware of how it works in Latin America and how it works in
you have
the
to be
American.
aware of both worlds.
You gotta be aware of
because
both
you have
worlds.
to be able to do that.
And we got to push them forward. We got to be like, yo, guys, you guys got to do better, man.
I actually have a question for you.
Go ahead, my dog.
And I don't know if it could be a topic or whatever.
Go ahead.
But especially, somebody like you who is a creative and you're very 305. So what are we doing about these implants that are coming down from up north, down here that are
Trying to ruin the 305 vibe, basically.
That was a topic that I wanted to touch on, actually, yeah. Because it's like, look.
See, that's what happens when we know each other. See, we can help each other out in the
Yeah,
topics.
Miami already opened up. What's that salad place? Sweet Greens.
Oh, but
Sweet
that's
green.
good.
I'm not saying it's not good, but it's like $20 for a salad.
For a salad,
Yeah.
It's pricey. It's pricey.
No, Como now is the Starbucks that's coming to La Ocho.
Yeah, there's one coming right
Where
now.
the-
So
where-
17.
Where the Burger King used to be. Yeah,
17,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's the best way to put it. Es una
17,
falta de respeto.
It is.
I mean,
I think it is.
there's two sides to it. If you're coming from New York and you want to assimilate to our culture, I'm down for that 100%. Do your thing. You still have your flavor from the Bronx type shit or whatever the fuck, but assimilate and do things how we do it over here, which I've come into contact with a couple of creatives like that. I'm super down for that. Okay. It's like, yo, that's what's up. I like it. I mean, I understand you're pricing everybody out because you got a shitload of bread. You sold your little rat hole for 1.2 million.
Pero bueno,
that's something outside. You know, like you can't. I can't really control that. But the ones that are trying to change the culture, trying to make their culture here, first of all, it's not gonna work. It's gonna be locals aren't gonna show up to your shit. It's gonna be like you and
Crypto
the
bro.
like exactly you and the other 3 fucking people who moved here last week or some shit, right? Like, oh, this is the space. It's not gonna work. You're looking like an ass in front of all of us because your little small community, even though it might make a lot of noise, isn't the fucking majority.
Son cuatro gatos.
Son cuatro gatos allá doing whatever the fuck is. It's just like you're doing it wrong, bro. Like you're only making yourself look stupid. In reality, you're bringing out like you're like making yourself a target type of situation. Like you're the idiot type of situation. Like, okay, that's the dumbass that I have to stay away from and like not even pay attention to and those things.
But let me ask you
Those
this
are the
though,
people.
because
Those are the people who say things like, oh, you're from here.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've
yes.
never met somebody
I've
from
never met you from Miami. And I'm like, right, because you never go
Bitch, 'cause
past
you don't get
La
outside of
Primera.
Brickell.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, in Brickell, nobody's from here.
Facts.
Right, exactly. Go to La 130 y pico.
Go to Hialeah, man.
Right, well,
go to
too.
Hialeah and tell me you never met nobody.
well, but
from
let me
Miami.
ask you this though: do you think that as more people come, because these aren't people that are interested in the culture here?
No.
they aren't. They probably even look down upon it a little bit
Yeah.
because our culture is very Latin.
Yeah.
It's very in your face. It's very loud. It's not sophisticated.
Yeah.
Like let's be honest. It's
All right,
not.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Well, it's not. but that's who we are. You know. Do you think though that as more and more of them come, and eventually there is going to be a certain amount of rejection,
Yeah.
right? Because that's not who we are, that's not who you are, and
Yeah.
you don't care to know about us, that they're eventually just going to turn right back around?
Nah, I
and-
think what they're gonna do is they're just gonna build their own little enclaves.
You
That's
think
what
so?
they're doing. Yeah, I mean that's what Brickell is. It's an own little enclave for out of towners, and they live in Brickell, and they can say they live in Miami, but they really never experienced real Miami, and they do their shit in Brickell. And then all the locals just avoid Brickell. Like basically everybody I know doesn't go to South Beach anymore. Literally, I don't know anybody who goes to fucking South Beach for anything.
Okay.
Why? Because it's all tourists and all touristy shit. It's nothing that you're gonna enjoy something local, right? I go to the beach. I go to Hallandale, bro. I'll go to the beach up there instead of going to South Beach.
I go to 69th Street. I go to
69th
Manolos.
Street.
I go to Hallover, but I'm a little more adventurous than some.
Exactly. So like nobody's really going to Sobe
Yeah.
or shit like that. That's where it started off. That's where like the culture was when when fucking Madonna and Stevens
Prince
bought
and Larios.
bought a house
Yeah.
and
Remember
Davis
Larios on Ocean
Cafe
Drive?
and all of that and Yucca and all of that back in the day.
Versace Mansion.
Versace
like that, yeah.
Mansion. But like now that's something that locals don't fuck around with, and Brickell's fastly becoming the same thing. And it's just gonna be like those are the enclaves where those people hang out, and it's just filled of tourists and like transplants. That's it.
But it bothers me because like I go to downtown and I go to Brickell and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
like,
gorgeous.
It's beautiful, and it sort of bothers me that people from here have had to leave that area,
Well, I
for
don't feel-
different reasons. But it's not our.
Well, I think they've had to leave, but they don't find it appealing.
Yeah,
They don't
there's
find it-
nothing
there's
there
nothing
for
there
me.
for me.
Right,
Exactly, there's nothing there
but
for
for
me.
all the reasons you just said.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. There's nothing there for me anymore. It's like, and I feel like everybody feels that way. The only people that I know that go to Brickell are like little young college students that go out
Yeah.
drinking and partying there, and that's about it. Anybody else, I don't know nobody else that will be like, oh, let's go hang out at Brickell. Like, what? I don't hear that. It'll be like, let's go to I'll go to Wynwood. Let's go to Alapata. Let's go to Hialeah. Let's go to, let's go drink at Leah Arts District. Let's go do
Oh,
these
you can
things.
go drink now on Bird Road.
Yeah, let's go drink this beer.
Yeah.
Let's go. I get a lot of invites for
They
shit
have
like
the
that.
best Dominican bakery in Alapata.
Yeah. Yes,
Like,
yes, I know
it's
what you're
no
talking
joke.
about. Yeah.
Like so good.
Yeah.
So good. But yeah, no, it bothers me because I feel that like Miami has gotten to where it has been by so much blood, sweat, and tears by so many people already in so many different communities that have
Yeah.
come here and illegalities along the way.
As we do.
That were very unique to Miami,
100%
right?
cocaine.
Yeah, I mean,
It snowed here for a little bit.
little
It
bit.
snowed here for a little bit.
Billy Corbin may have a
Sniz.
thing or two to say
Yes,
about that. Which, by the way, I called you to tell you congrats on
Yeah,
that.
Thank
that
you,
was a
man.
phenomenal
I
Appreciate
called you to
that.
tell you because Billy Corbin's not an easy one, and that was a great conversation.
Thank you, man.
That
I
was a great
appreciate it.
conversation.
I have fun with him.
But it's like we worked so hard to get here because if you think about like that old school Miami you were talking about Madonna and Larios
Yeah.
and all that in the 90s, that was all built on the backs of so many people, that were from here.
No,
that
I
were-
mean that's what brought Madonna here.
Right.
That culture.
Right.
That's what brought Steven Stallone here. That culture.
from like people that worked hard and made it and brought that here.
Yeah.
And now to see like these people that just don't care about the culture, that are trust fund babies, or they have all this, technology money, although it doesn't even have to do with the technology. Just come here and think that they could just, hacer lo que quieran.
Yeah.
Sí, que yo soy dueño aquí ahora.
This is my playground. And it's
Yeah.
like, dude, you're shitting on like, you know, generations of people that really did everything they could to make Miami, you know, the crazy place that it is.
Yeah.
But it has a personality.
Yeah.
It does have a personality. And how dare you show up and just disavow it? You know, like say, no, I don't care about it. I'm gonna make it mine. Like you wouldn't do that when you go to Chicago. You wouldn't do that when you go to New York.
No, that's where
you know what I mean. Like you don't do that.
No,
And-
those people do that everywhere.
No. But I'm saying like you don't move to New York and be like, well, I'm gonna be, you know, no. New
Yeah.
York is New York,
No, I
kids.
hear
Like
you.
it will never change for you, you know. And yet the gall of
Yeah.
thinking that you're gonna show up here and like you're going to be the one that makes it.
The thing
you
is
know,
that there's
whatever
a
you
lot
want.
of them moving here. That's the real, because those people are always gonna do that wherever they move. They can move to Wyoming and they're changing up Wyoming, and people in Wyoming are pissed as fuck. They're like, "Oh, you guys are it's just not local anymore," and the whole vibe and the culture is like, yeah, it's true, because those assholes are showing up in mass droves and changing it. But those type of people will always
fair.
do that wherever the fuck they go. It's just that they're coming here now because the secret's out that Miami's the shit. You know, it's basically it. Like Miami's the shit. The secret's out. They want to come here. And I don't blame them for wanting to come here, because I understand Miami is the shit. Like 100%. ¿Quién se quiere fucking morir de frío, dog? Like half the year, bro. Like nobody wants to go to
No,
that shit.
and you take for granted, you know,
take that
the
shit
beauty
for
of
granted,
Miami,
bro.
because I lived for several years. I lived downtown, and I was fortunate enough to have an apartment that overlooked the bay. And I have to tell you, I never woke up one morning and not one day and take it for granted. I'm like, shit, I am so freaking lucky to live here.
Yeah.
That this is what I get to look at every day. Or even just like going to the beach. 'Cause
Yeah.
I love to go to the beach. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, we are so lucky that like we have one of the most beautiful beaches in the world just 20 miles away,
Yeah.
you know, that could stand up to any beach.
Yeah, in the world.
But everybody talks about, oh, California beaches.
Oh, no.
I've been to California beaches in Malibu and in Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, San Francisco.
Malibu, all that shit,
They're very
yeah.
pretty.
Yeah.
Like the mountains are very
look
pretty.
good.
They look good.
It's very
That
postcard.
water is
That
cold
water
as
es una
fuck,
mierda.
Oye, es
and
agua
it's black as fuck.
fría como
Yeah,
cojones.
and it's always choppy,
Yeah.
like, you know, in here because
Yeah.
it's the Caribbean. Sort
We
of.
have basically, yeah. I mean, we have the best, basically, like outdoors of any city. You know, and you don't have to ice
Minus
your
the
windows.
humidity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take humidity over icing your windows any day. You know,
That's
having
fair.
to go outside and turn your car 15 minutes before you have to drive away somewhere.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What? Never, dog.
You live that.
The struggle is real.
That shit is real, bro.
Yeah.
And as you get older, it gets progressively
Dude, when
harder.
I was up in
worse.
Michigan, there was one night, actually it was in the morning, that there was a blizzard. And I never, from
Yeah.
Miami, I could talk hurricanes all day, but
Yeah.
a blizzard, and a blizzard is not even so much like when it came down and knocked down your house. No,
Yeah.
it's that it snowed, 10 feet in like 2 hours.
And you're stuck.
I remember I came out and I'm like, I know I parked over there, but I don't have no clue where my car is at because like the whole parking lot was a blanket,
Hopefully,
and-
you have food.
yeah, well, yeah. But
Latinos always have food.
it's-
Mejor que sobra que falte, okay? That's how we roll.
yeah, that's another Latin thing. When I
Yeah.
lived up there, my parents used to call me every day. Tuviste que va a caer nieve, and I'm like, yes, I know, I'm living here. I'm seeing the nieve right now.
I'm seeing the nieve.
Ponte un abrigo, no se quede con el pelo mojado.
I mean, it's a blessing, man. It's a blessing growing up in South Florida. Now that I'm I'm older person and I've traveled and I've seen other cities and I see other places, and it's just like, yeah, like I always say, Miami's probably the capital of Latin America. You know, it's if Miami was in any Latin American country, it would be the New York of fucking Latin
Yeah.
America. So it's like we are the New York of all Latin America. We are the center of it.
You know that I often feel that if I lived someplace else, and I love Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago's my favorite city in the U.S. Like I think it's beautiful. There's so much culture in Chicago.
Yeah.
Like especially with architecture and all that. But I feel that if I lived somewhere else, I'm always gonna have to be Miami-splaining, and it's just exhausting.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm not gonna let it slide tampoco. When I hear somebody
100%.
talking some bullshit about Miami that's not right, I'm not gonna be like, okay, whatever.
Like, yo, shut the fuck
Yeah,
up about
so I feel that
Miami.
I'm always gonna have to be like, oh, here I go again on my soapbox. That's not what Miami is, people.
I mean,
We're not the Will Smith song.
for sure, bro. Everybody thinks
There
it's
are worse
that.
things to be, though.
That's what the tech bros think us all about. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming onto the podcast,
No, thank you for having us, man.
chopping it up with me, letting me know your thoughts, giving us some tidbits, and maybe something that somebody could walk away with and help them out in a creative field or whatever, you know. So especially Latinos, you're like I have a big soft spot in my heart for like Latino creators because I'm a Latino creator myself and I'm surrounded by Latinos here, but oftentimes I'm aware that other Latinos outside of Miami are like maybe the only one in their little town in Indiana or some shit.
But it sounds really cheesy, but who else is going to tell your story?
Facts.
It's
Well,
true.
thank you guys for coming on.
No, any reason to hang out with you.
Yeah, seriously, like, you don't have to go through all this to get us to hang out, you know? You can just call. I'm down the street.
Face easy, bro. We'll hang out and have a barbecue.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm down.
That sounds
Barbecue
good.
this
We'll
fall.
make the wings.
I got the barbecue.
There you
back
go.
There, yeah.
We'll bring the wings and you bring the barbecue.
When are you guys doing the ping pong pollo again?
Well, we had a pop-up yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the next one is August 20th.
Where was it yesterday?
It was on Saturday.
Jay Wakefield.
Jay Wakefield.
Oh, okay. J. Wakefield Brewing. They're pretty good.
We have a new flavor.
Oh, what is
It's called it Santero.
Wow.
It's
that sounds controversial as fuck.
it's a white Alabama
It's
sauce.
it's Santero because it is a religious experience.
Yeah.
When you
Okay.
eat it, that's where we're storing are sticking to it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Well, I mean, look, being Cuban, we're not gonna call it the evangelical. It's it's
for sure.
Santero.
Evangelical. For sure.
But yeah, we have the guava, the Korean, and now the Santero. And we only have the regular naked wing, but
Yeah,
it's gone
bro.
really well, and it has it's very Miami centric.
Yeah, you guys are good with that shit, man. Anybody gets a chance to check out Ping Pong Pollo, you guys should definitely check out the IG as well, because that's where you guys put when you guys doing the pop-ups and things like that.
Yeah.
That's what's up, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, everybody. If they want to follow you and listen to your podcast and look at your social media, where can they follow you?
So we are on Instagram at Pero Let Me Tell You, and as far as platforms, we're on everything. Like
Okay.
I think we're probably on platforms that don't even exist yet. It's just we're out there. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeart.
Okay.
SoundCloud.
If it has a podcast platform, we're probably on there.
Anything new to look out for? Are you guys going in any other directions, doing any other projects? Besides the Ping Pong Pollo.
I was gonna say I don't know how many more projects we can handle at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. Just continue with the podcast. I mean, we can't believe we're 214 episodes in.
Year 5.
And I mean, we love it. We love
Yeah,
it.
man.
It's opened up a world of opportunity. So
It's a fucking
And not
awesome
just
podcast.
because we've gotten to meet people like yourself. Like
Thank you,
honestly,
man.
I know it sounds
Yeah.
cheesy as hell, but to piggyback on what you're saying, it's the biggest perk of what we've been able to do is meet people like yourself, other creatives here locally or abroad, Latino creatives, because that's what we're trying to help give that voice, right? Like support local and all of it.
When we started doing this, we never ever thought about the component of making friends with people, like
Right.
really good friends, and all the people we would meet along the way that will become part of our extended family. You being one of them.
Likewise, man.
So that's been something that's been a blessing. That's been great.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome. Oh, last thing I want to ask you before you guys go real quick is, do you guys have I want you to throw out in the universe who you want on the podcast?
So I think our dream guest was Gina Torres, but I think anybody
checked off.
from
Right.
Miami, your dream guest is probably going to be the Estefans or like somebody like Pitbull,
Right.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, so I'm putting it out in the universe. Any good Miamian 305, it's the Estefans, and then of
Estefans.
course Pitbull will be a fun interview. So.
Pitbull, the Estefans. I want to throw one out myself. I'm hoping sometime when the podcast is still airing, I get Cristina, bro.
She is one that I would love to have as well.
I mean, she's one of the originators. She's like
You want to talk
Latin
OG?
Oprah.
She is OG.
GG.
I
Yeah.
remember watching her like daily.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things like, yo, I want to talk to Cristina to hopefully, let's see what happens. But that's Miami as fuck right there.
Yeah.
Like being able to pick her brain, and she's like one of the top creatives
Yeah, I don't know.
before Pitbull and all that shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she definitely is.
Well, thank you once again for listening to the Que Bola podcast, everybody out there. Thank you for sharing and subscribing. Check out the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast. Check out Ping Pong Pollo on IG. And like I say, if you like it, share it with your friends. And if you hate it, share it with your enemies, but just share this motherfucker, all right? Till the next time, it's your boy D Fig. Peace. Yo, that was a dope talk. Thank you so much, DJ Ishmael. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Pero let me tell you, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts, your insights on all things Latino, all things creative, all things South Florida. Thank you so much for pushing that awesome vibe out there for everybody to enjoy. If you guys liked the podcast, I highly suggest you follow, subscribe. Pero let me tell you, podcast. Follow, subscribe, Pim Pam Pollo. If you're in Miami, you might get some of the dope-ass chicken wings. Maybe you're on vacation. You never know. You can stop to one of the pop-ups. You should check out the Que Bola podcast also if you liked it. All right? And if you hated it, you should share it with your enemies. This is my thing, bro. All right? If you have any suggestions for people coming up on the podcast, holla at your boy, Wassa, WSSA, at fresherfresh.com. Fresh or Fresh Media, you know what it is. We taking over this mug, the media network in the works. Fresh or Fresh Media, Que Bola podcast, a lot more things coming in the works. Thank you once again. Hasta la próxima, que te crezca. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in. Peace.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.